Gentlemen, a very good day to you, and here's another episode for Manston on Air. Today I wanted to talk to you about symbolic folders, and in particular in relation to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, because it can get quite confusing, especially the community folder as it is great. It's one place where all the add-ons go into one folder, and actually all credit to Microsoft for making a relatively straightforward, simple idea concept to just put everything in one place. Where it falls down, though, is the lack of organization and sort of the lack of control and sort of oversight over all the add-ons that you might want to interact with, and the naming structure that you download and install add-ons is different depending on the developer. So it can be quite hard to find and interact with add-ons that you're looking for. One piece of software that's out there that I do possibly recommend, if that's something you're struggling with, is this Microsoft Flight Simulator add-ons linker software. It's available on flightsim.to for free, and it basically is a GUI, a user interface, that you can interact with all your add-ons. You can disable, enable, and you can also have symbolic links to add-ons, so they don't all have to be in the community folder. They can be where you want them. Perhaps you wanted them on a different drive to your community folder or so on. One of the things I've done, not on this computer but on my laptop, is I've, just like you see here on the left hand side, I've changed it into aircraft, scenery, liveries and so on. So you can make categories, which I think is a really useful tool, and actually something that I think Microsoft could have foresaw, but they didn't. So that's an add-on. That's a software that I do recommend to use. It's not the most intuitive to start with, but it is, once you get to grips with it, it is going to give you much more control over the structure of your community folder. Speaking of the community folder, there is a setting in Microsoft Flight Simulator that will allow you to change the location of your community folder. I would probably do that on a clean install of the Flight Simulator. I think it's under developer options, although Dan might correct me. It may be somewhere else. You can change the location of your community folder to somewhere other than hidden in the depths of your app data, Microsoft Flight Simulator main directory. So I've got mine set up on my E drive here. So it's under MSFS 2020, and initially I only had these two folders, community and official. If I go into my community folder, you can see there's a hell of add-ons here, right? And it's difficult to trawl through and interact with them. And this video is actually going to be mostly focused on the PMDG series aircraft, because it seems to be clear now the structure that PMDG is using for their add-ons, and I'm finding it a little bit clunky. The way that the simulator structure used to work was you had this sim objects folder, and then your aircraft were in there, and under each aircraft type, whether that was 737-800 or the 800 winglets, or the blended winglets, or the split scimitar winglets, then you'd have the repaints within each of those. And in fact, obviously PMDG provide their own software, the PMDG Operations Center, that lets you install PTP files and download liveries and so on, and that still works for Microsoft Flight Simulator. But where it falls down is when you're having to interact with some of the files more specifically. So, for example, if you are installing repaints manually rather than via PTPs, if you want to interact with the nav data files, as we do every month for Manston Air, and also when you want to inject flight plans and weather files into the sim. This has become more clunky because there are so many different folders for that, whereas those files, the ones pertaining to nav data and to to flight plans and weather used to be in one place. It used to be in more or less one place. It used to be in the P3D main directory, and then you go to PMDG, and then you'd have your flight plans there. There would be a few subfolders, but it was all in one place. Now, if you look here, I have to scroll all the way through. In fact, I'm just going to put P on my keyboard to get to PMDG. Now, obviously, these are the only PMDG aircraft available so far, the 737, 737, 738. For each aircraft, there is... Hang on, I won't show you that one. I'll show you the 7376. If I go to config, then you have to go into config, and then you have your nav data, your SID stars file, your weather, and your flight plans. And that applies also to the 737 and the 738. So when it comes time to updating your nav data, you then have to update it 3 times for 3 different aircraft. And when you're coming to add Manston into that nav data, again, having to do it 3 times for 3 different aircraft. And again, when you're importing flight plans or weather files, depending on which aircraft you intend to fly, then for that specific aircraft type, whether it's 736, 7 or 8, you're going to have to go into each individual one and paste, your flight plan and your weather file. So it is a bit clunky. It could be a lot better. There is, however, one solution around this, and I came up with it today. I'm sure other people have done the same, but it's just something I was thinking about. Bringing into the same idea of symbolic folders, and it is a symbolic folder. So I'll very quickly show you what I've done here. If I go back to my Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, I've added this PMDG folder here. If I go into the PMDG folder, I've got everything I want to be symbolized or symbolic in specifically these folders. So I've got all my flight plans in here. I've already set it up in anticipation for the 747 and the 777, but I've put NG3 in here for the 73 NG3 that we're using. I've got my nav data in here. I've got my SID stars, and I've got my weather files as well. So that's there. Now you ask, this is not anywhere near the community folder. How does this work? I'll show you how it works. I go back to Microsoft Flight Simulator Community, go to P. I've set it up for the 737 and 738, so I'm going to show you how to do it with the 736, but I'll just show you the 737, for example, config. And now you see these folders here. Now you see they're like a shortcut emblem there on each of these. That's because they're symbolic folders. And when I double click on them, they point to the other folder that I was showing you before that I had made. However, the actual path is exactly as it should be. So for the sake of applications, including Microsoft Flight Simulator and including the PMDG series aircraft, they see these files as being in the correct place. I will just show you, for example, let me bring up another file explorer and go to PMDG flight plans. NG3. So this folder is being symbolized in this 737 config flight plans, and I will prove it's the same it's being mirrored by simply deleting a file. I'll delete this flight plans, go in this directory file, delete, and they've gone from both sides because it's almost like a mirror image. So that's useful because you can then do that with all PMDG products, and then you only have to update the one location rather than going into each individual aircraft. So I'll show you how to set this up for the 736. And obviously I've done it for the NG3 folder because these use slightly different syntax root files to, for example, the 777 and the 747. So that's what I will do. There's also a program that I've been using to do this. You don't have to use the program. You can do it manually, but you basically need to get to grips with a little bit of code, and it's a little bit more clunky. So what I'll do is I will link this program. This is basically a batch file in the description of this video, and you'll be able to use it for yourself. It is quite straightforward to use it once you work out how it's meant to be used. There is one caveat with this, and that is that in order for this to work as seamlessly as it is right now, let's say the master folder, i.e. the one where you want everything to be the same, needs to be on the same drive as the mirrored folders. Otherwise, the way that it's so seamless, it just won't be as seamless. So let's go to the 736 config. Now we won't be needing this anymore, we won't be needing this anymore, we won't be needing this anymore, and we won't be needing that anymore. Delete. So now if I were to load it up as a 736 now, it wouldn't know anything, about its life. It would have no nav data. But we're going to fix that. So I've copied the program in here. It's a Symbolic creator batch file. And it's quite a simple job. So what we shall do is, what you need to do, so here's the PMDG here, you just copy the folders that you want to be symbolically linked. So I'll take these three to begin with, because then I'll fish the ng3 out in a second. So you take them and you drag them onto the Symbolic creator. It then comes up with this command window, and it says, oh, where's the path of the folder wherein the Symbolic will be created? I'll use that path there. So then I paste that path, I then hit enter, and then it talks about source and destination drives are the same, so you have the opportunity to create a hard symlink, and this is what I was talking about just a second ago. There's a difference between a hard symlink and a soft symlink, and we want it to be a hard symlink so that it's more seamless, so that basically the simulator and PMDG think that the files are actually in that location, whereas they're actually not. So press 1, then hit enter, finished. That's done the job. All three folders are there, and they will point to this folder. That's all it is to it. Now for the final trick in my book, I then go to flight plans and then ng3. I'm going to do the same for the ng3 folder, but initially it's not going to work because it needs to be named flight plans, because that's what it's looking for. Oh, I've just put it on Ab Manston, that's not good. Okay, we'll look at that in a second. That was a bit, there you go, there's a live recording for you. So ng3. I don't know what I did there anyway. ng3, Symbolic creator. Path to folder wherein Symbolic will be created. We just copy and paste this again. We hit enter, we push 1, we hit enter, finished. So now it's called ng3. You just need to rename this to flight plans. And now, when I go into flight plans, it looks inside the ng3 folder. Simple as that. And I think, for 5 minutes work, it's going to save you a lot of headache by doing this. And then, of course, I've added the admanston file into this folder so that when a new AIRAC comes up and we need to update the Manston nav data, I just run it from here, and it applies to all PMDG aircraft because they'll all be pointing to one location. It's so much simpler than going into what will be 5, 10 aircraft folders, because there'll be a 777 200 or 777 L and a 777 300 and so on, and a 744 and a 748 and so on. So that will certainly save a lot of time and effort, and I think it's something that's worth talking about. I'll make another video about this software behind here, the MSFS add-ons linker, because I think it is quite a handy tool, and I think it's worth talking about as well, because it gives you, again, similar sort of control over your add-ons. It's quite useful to play with. Anyway, that's it from me for now. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate that it may have been of interest to you, may not be. But as Microsoft Flight Simulator is becoming more prevalent, and I also think, I was talking to Dan today, we had a chat, both of us almost don't even want to pick up P3D again. We feel we have to because a lot of the heavies are on there, but at the same time, I'm so happy with my experience on Microsoft Flight Simulator now with some proper aircraft, such as the PMDG 737, such as the Phoenix A320, that I really don't see the point in going back to what is ostensibly, a 17-year-old sim, Flight Simulator X. It's what it's based on. Clunky, old, laggy, crashy. Microsoft Flight Simulator is just so smooth, buttery, and it looks great, and it flies well. It flies really well. I've been putting in some landings in the 737 the past few days, and it's a completely different animal to the 737 NGXU found in P3D. It's a very nice airplane to fly. Okay, guys, I am whittering on now, so hope you enjoy, and I'll speak to you very soon. Cheers. Bye bye.